In this transformative talk, Great Pain, I reveal the natural tools and scientific strategies to boost your dopamine levels. The brain's key chemical for motivation, drive, and long-term success. No hype, no shortcuts, just real practical insights rooted in cutting-edge neuroscience. Whether you're feeling stuck, unmotivated, or simply want to unlock the next level of performance, this talk is for you. Great Pain. You get ready to learn how to harness your brain's natural chemistry to take back control of your focus, energy, and life direction. If you're ready to break free from procrastination and build unshakable motivation using science, then stay tuned till the end and take notes. Your journey to high performance begins now. Dopamine is often misunderstood as just a feel-good chemical, either great pain. But in reality, it's much more powerful and foundational to human behavior. It's the molecule of motivation, drive, pain, ambition, and reward. Without dopamine, we wouldn't pursue goals, wake up with energy, or even feel a sense of purpose in our daily lives. I explained that dopamine is not just released when we have something. It plays an even bigger role in the anticipation of reward, the journey toward a goal. This means dopamine is what fuels us to take action, not just celebrate success. When you understand how dopamine works in the brain, Great Pain, you begin to see why some days you're fired up with motivation while other days you can't even start. Great Pain. It all comes down to how your dopamine system is functioning and whether you're supporting it or draining it. Dopamine operates through what neuroscientists call the mesolimbic pathway, often referred to as the reward pathway. Great Pain. When you have a desire to accomplish something, your brain releases dopamine, which propels you into action, either great pain. It gives you energy and focus. But dopamine isn't just a result of positive experiences. Pain, it is also influenced by your mindset, your expectations, and your habits. In fact, pain, your brain can release more dopamine just by believing that what you're doing is meaningful or moving you closer to your goals. This is why two people can do the same task and one feels energized while the other feels drained. Great Pain. It's all about the dopamine interpretation behind the activity. That's why learning how to manage and trigger dopamine in healthy ways becomes a life skill, not just a science trick. I emphasize that one of the biggest mistakes people make is chasing dopamine in the wrong ways, through artificial or shallow sources like constant scrolling, great pain, junk food, or quick entertainment. These activities spike dopamine rapidly but cause a crash shortly after, leaving you feeling unmotivated and empty. Over time, this reduces your baseline levels of dopamine, which means you start to feel numb, lazy, or stuck. The key is to preserve and strengthen your dopamine system by using it for things that lead to growth, achievement, and long-term reward. This means shifting your focus from instant pleasure to meaningful progress. Grain. Dopamine isn't inherently bad or good. It depends on how and why you trigger it. Natural, sustainable dopamine is the secret to high-performing individuals who stay consistent over time because they learn to associate reward with effort, not just outcomes. It also points out that dopamine is highly linked to our ability to plan, think into the future, and resist distractions. Pain. This means when your dopamine system is optimized, you're more likely to take action even when results aren't immediate. You become more resilient, more driven, and more disciplined. Pain. This is what separates people who just dream from those who actually build something meaningful. Great pain, they know how to work with their brain chemistry instead of fighting against it. Pain, they turn natural biology into a powerful advantage by aligning their habits, thoughts, And routines with the dopamine system, delayed gratification, is one of the most powerful tools for strengthening your dopamine system and building lasting motivation. Either great pain. I explained that when you delay the reward and focus on the process rather than the outcome, pain, your brain actually begins to rewire itself to enjoy effort and persistence. Either great pain. Dopamine is not just released when we achieve something, it's released during the pursuit of a goal, especially when we expect something meaningful at the end. This means that learning to delay gratification isn't about denying yourself pleasure. It's about training your brain to derive pleasure from the act of striving itself, pain. When we condition ourselves to enjoy small steps, challenges, and discomfort along the way, great pain, we are strengthening the very circuits that make long-term success possible. Great pain. This shift in mindset transforms how the brain perceives work, failure, and discipline. Huberman notes that people often sabotage their own dopamine systems by constantly seeking quick wins and instant validation. Either great pain, things like checking notifications, snacking on sugary foods, or binge watching videos give the brain short bursts of dopamine. But these pain come at a cost. The more we rely on immediate rewards, the less sensitive our dopamine receptors become. Great pain, which means we need more stimulation to feel the same level of motivation. Over time, this leads to a drop in baseline dopamine levels, and we begin to feel numb, bored, or easily distracted. Either great pain. Delayed gratification counters this by teaching the brain to value and anticipate larger, more meaningful rewards in the future. This anticipation builds dopamine over time and sustains energy and focus through long periods of effort. One of the most effective ways to practice delayed gratification is to intentionally reward effort, not just outcomes. Great pain. Huberman recommends that after completing a challenging task, whether it's a workout, a deep study session, or focused work, you should take a moment to acknowledge the effort itself, pain. This trains the brain to associate hard work with internal satisfaction. Over time, great pain, the brain becomes less dependent on external rewards and more focused on the fulfillment that comes from progress. Pain, this kind of mental training is essential for athletes, entrepreneurs, students. Pain, and anyone who wants to sustain performance over time. When effort becomes the source of reward, consistency becomes natural rather than forced. Another important aspect is how you talk to yourself during the process. Great pain. The internal narrative you create while doing difficult things directly affects your dopamine response. If you frame the effort as painful, pointless, or boring, your brain will resist it and associate it with stress. But if you train yourself to see the challenge as an opportunity, a signal of growth, or a step toward mastery, great pain, dopamine will be released even in the struggle. This creates a loop where effort fuels more motivation, not less. The more you practice this, the stronger your dopamine pathways become, and the easier it is to stay committed to your goals regardless of how far away the outcome may seem. Physical movement and cold exposure are two of the most powerful and natural ways to increase dopamine levels in the brain. It highlights how these tools, backed by neuroscience, can be used to create a significant and lasting increase in motivation and focus. When you engage in physical activity, even something as simple as a brisk walk or light workout, your brain responds by releasing dopamine. Great pain. This is not just about feeling good in the moment. It actually shifts your brain chemistry in a way that enhances drive. Great pain improves mood and boosts your ability to stay consistent with challenging tasks. Exercise doesn't just spike dopamine temporarily. It helps reset your baseline grain, allowing you to experience deeper motivation over time. Cold exposure, such as cold showers or ice baths, works on a similar principle, but creates an even more intense neurochemical response. When the body is exposed to cold, either great pain, it perceives it as a mild stressor. This controlled stress triggers the release of dopamine in a delayed yet sustained wave, either great pain. Unlike many other dopamine-inducing behaviors that result in a short spike and crash, cold exposure causes a steady rise in dopamine that can last for hours. According to me, great pain. This is because cold activates the body's survival mechanism, engaging the nervous system in a way that boosts alertness. Great pain improves mood and enhances cognitive function. This can be incredibly helpful for people who feel sluggish, stuck in low energy, or unable to focus. The body becomes more resilient and the mind becomes sharper with regular exposure to discomfort through cold. Great pain. Combining movement with cold exposure can create a powerful synergy. For example, starting your day with a light workout followed by a cold shower can elevate dopamine levels while simultaneously training your body and brain to embrace effort and discomfort. These routines act as anchors that condition your mind to feel energized and ready to take action. Great pain. The best part is that these tools are free and accessible. They don't require medication, supplements, or complex routines. They are based on evolutionary biology and how the human body was designed to function optimally under natural challenges. Pain. When you introduce these stressors in a controlled and intentional way, either great pain, you are building mental toughness and strengthening the dopamine system from the inside out. I also note that these methods are especially effective when done consistently and mindfully. The brain adapts to patterns on pain. So when you make physical movement or cold exposure a regular part of your life, your dopamine system becomes more efficient. Pain. This leads to a stronger baseline of motivation and makes it easier to pursue goals that require long-term focus. The discomfort of cold or effortful movement becomes associated with a mental reward, which conditions the brain to see challenge as something positive rather than threatening. This is a fundamental shift in how the nervous system responds to life, allowing you to develop a mindset that thrives in pressure and finds energy in effort. Great pain. These natural dopamine triggers are tools to rewire your habits, not just hacks to feel good for a moment. One of the most important concepts I emphasize is the regulation of your dopamine baseline. Great pain, which is your brain's resting level of dopamine. When this baseline is low, everything feels harder, motivation drops, and it becomes difficult to find joy in even the things you used to enjoy. On the other hand, when your dopamine baseline is healthy and balanced, you feel energized, focused, and capable of sustained effort. Pain. One of the biggest threats to maintaining a healthy dopamine baseline is overstimulation, especially from modern sources like social media, processed foods, video games, and constant entertainment. These sources give your brain a quick surge of dopamine, but after that surge comes a crash, and the more often this cycle is repeated, the more it drains your dopamine system over time. The brain is highly adaptive, either great pain, and when it's repeatedly exposed to artificial dopamine spikes, it begins to downregulate dopamine receptors. This means your brain stops responding to dopamine as strongly. Great pain, and activities that once felt rewarding or exciting become dull or boring. Over time, you become less motivated, less focused, and more likely to procrastinate or feel mentally foggy. Dr. Huberman. Huberman refers to this as the dopamine deficit state, either great pain, a condition where the brain's reward system has been dulled by too much easy stimulation, either great pain. This state is common in people who constantly scroll through their phones, binge watch videos, either great pain, or use sugary snacks, emotional relief. The solution to this is not just stopping these behaviors, but learning how to replace them with habits that support and restore dopamine balance to protect your dopamine baseline, great pain. It's essential to create boundaries around activities that offer fast, shallow dopamine. This doesn't mean you can never use social media or watch a show, but you must become intentional with your consumption. Huberman suggests using these sources sparingly and never stacking them with other dopamine-inducing activities. For example, either great pain, avoid combining social media with junk food or listening to music while watching videos. Either great pain, these combinations multiply the dopamine spike and worsen the crash afterward. The goal is to give your brain space to reset by doing low dopamine or no dopamine activities like walking without your phone. Either grain, sitting quietly, or engaging in focused work without distractions. These moments of mental stillness allow your dopamine receptors to become sensitive again. Great pain, raising your baseline naturally. Sleep, sunlight, and hydration also play a huge role in dopamine regulation. Quality sleep helps reset dopamine levels, while early morning sunlight triggers a natural rise in dopamine and other neurotransmitters associated with mood and alertness. Dehydration, even mild, can impair dopamine production and energy levels. Great pain, all of these biological needs work together to maintain a healthy system. Huberman also emphasizes the importance of not over-rewarding yourself with external dopamine for tasks that should be internally driven. Pain. Instead of giving yourself a sugary treat or a dopamine spike after every small task, learn to generate internal satisfaction through reflection and self-talk. This strengthens the connection between effort and internal reward, which leads to a more stable and self-sustaining motivation system. Over time, I explain that one of the most powerful ways to unlock dopamine is by connecting your actions to a deeper purpose, pain, a personal vision, or an internal reward system. Great pain. When people engage in tasks that align with their core values or a meaningful goal, great pain. Their brain releases dopamine not just because of the task itself, but because the task is perceived as part of a larger mission. This connection to purpose strengthens the brain's reward pathways and creates a sustainable source of motivation that does not rely on external validation. Great pain. When your daily efforts are tied to something that matters deeply to you. Whether it's building a career, improving your health, supporting your family, or making an impact in the world, your dopamine system becomes more resilient and more active in helping you move forward through difficulties, and setbacks. Internal rewards are especially powerful because they don't rely on outcomes. Pain, they are generated from the way you interpret your efforts. For example, a person studying late at night can either think, this is exhausting and pointless, or they can think, this effort is building my future and helping me become the person I want to be. The second mindset activates dopamine more strongly, either great pain, even if the results have not yet arrived. Huberman emphasizes that this internal framing is a skill, either great pain, and it can be developed by practicing intentional self-talk and visualization. When you visualize the positive outcomes of your consistent actions and emotionally connect with your goals, your brain is more likely to reward you with dopamine during the effort itself, not just after you achieve success. Another key element of unlocking dopamine through purpose is having a clear vision. Vision, the brain direction. When the mind knows where it is going and why, it engages more fully in the process. Clarity of vision reduces internal conflict, making it easier to make decisions, stay disciplined, and resist distractions. Huberman notes that the human brain is designed to seek progress, either great pain. And when we track even small signs of progress toward a meaningful vision, dopamine is released. Pain. This progress can be something as small as checking off a habit tracker, completing a workout, or finishing a page of writing. The key is recognizing it as a meaningful step, pain, which reinforces your sense of purpose and boosts internal motivation. Pain, purpose also helps the brain endure discomfort. When actions are infused with meaning, the brain is more willing to tolerate painwardom or struggle. This is why athletes, artists, and entrepreneurs who are deeply connected to their mission are able to push through levels of effort that others might find impossible. Great pain. They are not simply motivated by the end goal. They are fueled by the significance of the journey itself. Huberman emphasizes that by consciously identifying your why and attaching your daily habits to that deeper reason, you can transform even the most difficult tasks into sources of energy and drive. This internal reward system is what separates a burst's short effort from lifelong discipline and consistent progress toward greatness. I emphasize that daily habits play a critical role in resetting and replenishing your dopamine levels, allowing you to stay motivated, focused, and mentally sharp over time. Pain. Dopamine is not about chasing big wins or long-term goals. It's also about the small, either great pain, consistent actions that regulate your brain chemistry on a daily basis. These actions don't require expensive tools or complicated routines. They are simple pain, science-based practices that anyone can use to naturally support their brain's motivation system. One of the most powerful habits is getting early morning sunlight. When natural light enters your eyes within the first hour of waking, it stimulates the release of dopamine and other alertness-related neurotransmitters. This natural light exposure also helps regulate your circadian rhythm, improving sleep quality, energy levels, pain, and emotional balance. Another essential habit is regular physical exercise, great pain, which is scientifically proven to elevate baseline dopamine levels over time. Pain, you don't need to do intense workouts to experience this benefit. Even moderate movement like walking, stretching, or bodyweight exercises can produce a noticeable effect. The key is consistency and intention. Moving your body signals to the brain that it's time to engage with life, solve problems, and pursue challenges. Great pain. Huberman notes that when you pair physical activity with positive internal dialogue or meaningful goals, the dopamine response becomes even stronger. This creates a feedback loop where the more you move, the more motivated you feel, and the more capable you become of staying consistent with your routines. Sleep is another foundational habit that significantly influences dopamine levels. Poor sleep reduces dopamine receptor sensitivity and impairs the brain's ability to manage stress, focus, and decision making. Huberman suggests prioritizing deep, uninterrupted sleep by following a consistent sleep schedule, limiting screen exposure before bed, and avoiding stimulants late in the day. Pain. Quality sleep acts as a reset for your nervous system and allows your dopamine system to function optimally the next day. Pain. Without proper rest, even the most effective dopamine boosting techniques will be limited in their impact. Sleep and dopamine are deeply connected, and great pain, improving one strengthens the other. Nutrition also plays a vital role in dopamine production. Certain amino acids like tyrosine found in foods such as eggs, fish, nuts, and dairy serve as raw materials for dopamine synthesis. Balanced meals that include healthy fats, proteins, and complex carbohydrates help stabilize blood sugar and support brain chemistry. Hydration is equally important pain, as even mild dehydration can disrupt neurotransmitter function and lower mental energy, either great pain. Huberman encourages people to be mindful of their food and water intake, not just for physical health, but for maintaining high motivation and mental clarity throughout the day. Another habit that supports dopamine is goal setting and tracking progress. They're great pain. When you write down your goals and acknowledge small wins, your brain releases dopamine in response to that progress. This reinforces a sense of accomplishment and encourages further effort. Journaling, planning your day, pain, and reflecting on your growth are simple but powerful tools that train your brain to focus on what's working rather than what's missing. These daily practices compound over time, building a strong, reliable source of internal motivation and helping you stay aligned with your bigger vision